writers, you're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. We're your hosts. I'm Tara Kremen, Director of Kobo Writing Life.
And I'm Rachel Wharton, Author Engagement Manager for Kobo Writing Life.
On today's episode, we chatted with another Rachel Amphlett. Before turning to writing, USA Today bestselling crime author Rachel Amphlett played guitar in bands, worked as a TV and film extra, dabbled in radio as a presenter and freelance producer for the BBC, and worked in publishing as an editorial assistant. She now wields a pen instead of a plectrum and writes crime fiction with over 30 novels and short stories featuring spies, detectives, vigilantes, and assassins. A keen traveler and accidental private investigator, which we will go into in detail, Rachel has both Australian and British citizenship.
Our chat with Rachel covered many topics, but one of the highlights included chatting about her longtime indie publishing career. Rachel entered indie publishing back in 2011 and is still going strong. And she told us about a lot of the lessons that she learned to run a successful indie publishing business. She also chatted about running a long-running series and how to really utilize your backlist to support upcoming releases. She gave great advice about creating three-dimensional secondary characters and how important they are to creating a three-dimensional world. And as a avid traveler, she talked about how she balances traveling and her somewhat nomadic lifestyle with her writing and publishing career. We covered so much in this episode. I truly think there's something for all writers out there, and we hope you enjoy.
Thank you so much for joining us, Rachel. We've got a double whammy of Rachels today, so we're going to try and not get listeners confused. But author guest, Rachel Amphlett, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love being on the Kobo Writing Life podcast.
So can you start out by telling listeners a little bit about yourself and about the books that you write?
Yeah, of course. So I've been doing this indie thing for about 15 years now. And when I started out, I can get my rocking chair out now because I've been doing this for so long. And it wasn't so easy to get your books out to readers. And I started off by writing my first novel because I was dabbling in short stories. And then an idea for a much bigger story that turned into my first spy thriller, White Gold, entered my head. And I went down the traditional route with the pitching and everything, but vampires were huge that year. I think Twilight had just come out. All the publishers were signing vampire novels. And I'm like, what about my spy thriller? And they were like, no, I don't want a spy thriller. And I was sulking a little bit on an old writing forum. And another Australian author reached out to me and went, have you ever thought about doing indie publishing? And I was like, what is that? And so she very kindly took me under her wing, even set up my Goodreads page for me because I didn't even have a clue about Goodreads. And I published my first book in June 2011. And I was using aggregators back then and things like that because it was still really early days. And it wasn't until that book was published and I started getting emails from readers from around the world that I didn't know saying, when's the next book out? We love this character. When's the next book in the series? And I was like, what next book in series? And I spent the next 12, 18 months frantically writing book 2 in what would become the Dan Taylor series and haven't looked back. In 2014, at the end of that year, I'd been approached for the Italian rights for the first book in that series. And I sat down at the end of 2014 over Christmas and thought, right, okay, if they can find me with just 3 books out and a really, to be perfectly honest, rubbish website, what happens if I put into practice everything that I've learned working for other people? And there were 3 things that made me change things. One was I need more books. If I'm going to do this writing malarkey, I need to dedicate more time to this writing malarkey and around a very busy full-time job. And the second one was start treating it like a business. And I committed from late 2014 into 2015 to write as much as possible. And I published 3 books in 2015. One of which is a standalone thriller called Look Closer. And that year, I put Look Closer on Kobo in with a 99-cent deal. And as they say, the rest is history, because I broke out on Kobo with that deal. And Kobo readers are still amongst my largest demographic in my writing business. And from then on, it's been 3 books a year, every year without fail. My life changed forever at the end of 2016, so almost 10 years ago, with the release of the first book in the Detective K. Hunter series. And I've always said to people, if you can, based on my own mistakes, write 3 books in a series up front before you even think about putting the first one on pre-order. And so that's what I did with K. Hunter. And then I don't do rapid release. I publish February, June or July plus October, because I have a life. And with the K Hunter series, because I had the first 3 books available and the 4th one I was currently writing the 4th one at the beginning of 2017, I could do rapid release with those. And so by the June, 3 K Hunter books were out. And in July 2017, I quit my full-time job because thanks to my readers, they just saw something in K Hunter, and Scared to Death is the book that changed my life. And I'm so excited that it gets its 10th anniversary this year because I got some really special things lined up for readers.
That's so exciting. And it's also exciting that the 10th anniversary of book 1 is the same year as book 15. Like the series is still going strong.
I'm currently writing book 16 right as we speak.
Wow.
That'll be going to my editor in about 2 weeks' time for next year.
That's so exciting. And before we dive into book 15, because we do want to talk about it, I kind of want to stay at the beginning of your career, because before you took the dive into authorship, you worked in music, TV, film, radio. You wore many different hats before you became an author. So I'm curious, what made you decide that the author path is the one that you were going to go down?
I think it's because when I moved to Australia in 2005, I'd spent the years, I loved creative writing at school. It's the only 2 decent grades I got before I left school at 16 is in English. And I've been reading since before I started school. One of my very early influences is Jack Higgins' The Eagle Has Landed, because my granddad lent me that one rainy afternoon from his bookshelf. And I've been hooked on crime and thrillers ever since. When I left school at 16, I had my heart set on playing in bands. And that's what I did until I was about 25, 26. And then when I moved to Australia in 2005, I tried putting together bands again, but I think I'd reached a point where I'd done it so many times and decided it was just too hard. It's like herding cats. Honestly, being in a band is like herding cats. It's hard work. And I thought, okay, that's not for me anymore. And I sort of sat around for about a year, not doing much. And it was like, I really, really crave to do something creative. And that's how I stumbled back into writing short stories. And one of them got shortlisted for a radio play competition. There were a couple of other minor hits there as well. And then I happened to be on holiday at middle of 2009, and the idea for White Gold popped into my head. I had no idea how to write a book. Queensland Writer Centre in Brisbane, Australia, they're fantastic. And I did their Year of the Novel course online for 8 or 9 months to just get that support in how the heck do I pull this idea out of a hat? You know, I've got it, you know, I learned so much with a fantastic fantasy author called Kim Wilkins. And I was so lucky a couple of years ago to return to Brisbane for GenreCon, and we were on a panel together. And it was like, oh wow, I'm here with the person who mentored my early writing career. It was so cool.
I love that. And you really were sort of self-publishing at the very start of the, I don't want to say boom because that implies that it's perhaps past, which isn't true, but at the very beginning when it was really sort of kicking off. And just curious, how did your previous careers impact your publishing? Because it sounds like you knew pretty quickly that this was a business. So can you talk about that sort of early stage?
Of course, yeah. I've worked in project management as a project administrator and then as a contracts administrator. And working in or sitting in meetings where they were doing risk analysis, schedule analysis and things like that helped me because, for example, I aim to work 12 to 18 months ahead of schedule. So if something goes wrong, if my laptop blows up or something happens like that, nobody knows outside of the business. You know, it's a case of the books still get published. There's still a professional output there. I've got a great team of contractors around me that do the editing, the proofreading, the cover design. For the contracts admin roles that I had, I know how to scope work. I know how to manage contracts and the basics of contract law. I've got experts, again, that I can turn to, legal advisors and accountants that I have in my bucket of experts. The scheduling is key. I use an Excel spreadsheet, and there's a format in engineering projects and many construction projects called a Gantt chart, and it's got a top level item. So in my case, that's the book. And then you break out that top level item. How does that book get to readers? So it's okay, write the book, edit the book, get the book proofread, get the covers designed. In the case of the K Hunter series, get the audiobook produced. And it works out like I just use 12 columns for every month of the year, and a little tick when those items need to happen. And I do that for every single book. And in there, I plan ahead. I know what I've got to write this year. I know if I get through the top 3 items, the top 3 books I've got to write this year, if I've got some spare time at the end of the year, I know what I'm going to write next after that. And then in between that will be some little fun projects like the production of my podcast, of short stories, or pitching for anthologies and things like that. The next thing that I do is a business plan separate to the schedule. And the business plan gives me, again, that 12-month look ahead. And I review it weekly. I keep a log of any marketing opportunities that crop up, such as pitching for Kobo promotions and things like that, any little wins that I've had, anything that I've learned. And the next thing is a cash flow forecast. Even when I was just starting out, I had to put my own money, or equity, owner's equity, as they call it in business terms, I knew where every cent went. So even now I can project based on my royalties what I'm allowed to spend this month. And I think that is key. It's key in any household. But if you extend it to your indie publishing career and you can track every single cost, then you can see, for example, was that Facebook ad really worth doing that month? If it wasn't, if it didn't break even or go into the black or make a profit, why not? What do I need to do more? Or, for example, is it worth me doing audiobooks in this series? Then that series hasn't quite taken off yet. Let's park that for now and we'll revisit it in 6 months' time. And I think if you do that from the start, I didn't do it for about 2 or 3 years. When I did do it, that's when things changed. It just enables you to hyper-focus on that publishing side of things when you're not doing the creative stuff.
I'm a very big fan of spreadsheets, and just hearing about your spreadsheet is exciting me and how organized you are. It's so impressive how many hats indie authors have to wear and how organized you have to be to not only write the books, but run your business. And you mentioned it took you a couple of years to get into this kind of organizational flow. And I'm curious if there's any other important lessons that you've learned along the way, whether from other authors or learning things the hard way throughout your indie publishing career.
Do you know what? People say to me, what's the one bit of advice you would give other writers? And I always say, write the next book. Don't make the mistake that I did, where I just wrote the first book and then was like, la, 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 pitching it around and all that. Because 1, you get out of the habit of writing. 2, something might happen that you need the next book for an opportunity that comes up. There are so many competitions around, and it doesn't matter whether you're indie or going down the trad route. There are so many opportunities for unpublished manuscripts ahead of schedule. And if something happens to you health-wise, let's hope that doesn't happen. But if something happens, you've still got a book up your sleeve that you can still push out and still keep your readers interested, where you get yourself back on your feet again. So yeah, best tip of all, write the next book.
What do you think your percentage sort of business versus writing is in your day-to-day?
I would say there's a definite 80-20 split, with 80% being the business side.
Wow.
Now, I've got back into dictation in the past 12 months, and that has escalated the productivity within that 20% so much. I'm still not going to do monthly releases, sorry. That's just crazy for me, because I have so many other things I'm interested in. But it does mean that when I suffer from a short attention span, and it just means I get greater output from those pockets of time that I wouldn't normally get. Sometimes I'll sit here in front of the laptop. I'm like, I know what I need to write, but it's not coming out. And I plug my little microphone in, and it's great because you can get your steps in as well, because you stick your voice app on and you can just pace up and down next to it, talking into your microphone. So you get your steps in for the day too. So yeah, it's 20 to 80, with 20% being the writing, but using that 20% of the time as effectively as possible.
Nothing will motivate us like a check mark of, yes, you've done your writing. Yes, you've gotten your steps. Yes, you've drank enough water.
I get my gold star today.
Exactly. And how impactful has it been to be a wide author for your business?
It took time. I think people think that they're going to go wide and it's going to be all at once. And for me, I was wide from the start. It never occurred to me to lock my books away for 90 days with another retailer. It didn't make sense from a business perspective. And I think it's because even though I didn't have a business plan or a schedule, I just knew it didn't make sense to be dictated to by one, because at the end of the day, they are a supplier. And you don't do that in the business. You don't put, the old English saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Why would you do it in your business, in your writing business? Because the rules can change all the time. So I went wide when I first published in 2011, and it took me until 2015 to really get a grip and really break out. But that, I think, was twofold. It's because it does take time, because you are spread so wide, you're not as focused in on one retailer, and that particular retailer does favor books that are locked in with them. Secondly, I didn't have enough material. So I think some authors beginning out think, I've got 2, 3, 4 books, it's going to take off any time now. Sometimes that doesn't happen. My big breakout didn't happen until Scared to Death. That was my 8th book. So I think sometimes a reality check is required. Authors are very lucky if they break out with their first book, and that's fantastic. It's really good. I'm actually grateful it took me that long, because I learned so much about the business and so much about my writing craft before things really took off. So I've never regretted going wide at all. There's so many opportunities out there. And with a business like Kobo, I can reach so many authors in so many different places in the world. And for someone with 2 passports, I flipping love that. I really love looking at my data reports and goes, somebody bought my book in. I don't know anybody there. And I still get a kick out of that. Even after 15 years, I still get a kick out of seeing new places on my dashboard. And then I want to visit them.
It's a great excuse to let up some air miles.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, we need a book tour there. I've sold 1 book.
But I guess it really is about kind of a focus on a career rather than chasing that like momentum of like that one book you're talking about, which can be hard as well. Because I say this as somebody that has never written a book and probably won't. Like, it is an achievement and you want to be able to celebrate that one. But I think it depends on like if you're looking at this from a career perspective, I guess.
Yeah, I still celebrate each new release, and I think you've got to. There's a heck of an achievement in that. It takes a lot of work. I get, by the time a book comes out for me, for example, What Evil Hides comes out on the 9th of February. I wrote that book over a year ago. So it also serves, working ahead of schedule also tempers expectations quite nicely as well. Because if somebody gives it, I always laugh when I get a 2-star review or something, someone goes, well, I knew who the bad guy was right from the start. And I'm thinking, I don't plot my books. So I kind of wish you'd told me, because it took me until chapter 42 before I had a clue who the bad guy was. So working ahead of schedule does that as well.
Now that you've mentioned that you don't plot your books, I really want to talk to you about your writing process, because mysteries and thrillers and crime novels do tend to be very plot driven and have those twists and turns. So I'm curious how you approach your initial draft and how much of that changes throughout the editing process.
I edit as I go. It's just the way I work. So when I first get an idea in my head, it's as if I'm remembering a scene from a movie I've seen or a TV drama. I get the first opening scene in my head, and it's usually in a spy thriller, somebody doing something they shouldn't be doing. Or in the case of a mystery thriller, it's somebody finds a dead body. And I accidentally became a qualified private investigator a few years ago. But prior to that, and part of the reason I accidentally got qualified was because I knew the senior investigating officer's handbook pretty much inside out. And that's like the Bible for UK police officers. It's fantastic. I recommend it to everyone. And the process is, for me, once I've got that initial scene and the setting and everything written, is I know the questions. I know what my detectives have to do when they turn up at that crime scene. I know what the procedure is. I know roughly the sort of questions they're going to ask. What I don't know is what witnesses are going to say to them by way of answers. And those are the scenes I love writing the most, because I could be halfway through a book and someone says something and I'm just sitting there going, well, I didn't see that coming. Okay, now what do I do? Sometimes involves swearing on my part, because I'm like, I thought we had a straight run through to the end of the book then. I was going to be on a roll. I was going to finish it 2 weeks ahead of schedule. And my characters are just like, no, you're not. And I just have to go with them. What I do in the morning, so for example, I'm 55,000 words into the current manuscript. So what I will do tomorrow morning is, before I start writing or dictating, I will read the work I did today to just get myself back into the world that I'm writing about. But also that's when I do my light editing. So if I see a sentence that's a bit clunky, or some repetitive words, or a spelling error, or if I don't have a character name or I need to look something up with regard to a real location, I just put 3 X's in the chapter and keep going so I don't slow down. And that's when I'll go back and tinker with all of that. That helps get my right side of my brain into writing mode for the day, and then I'll just do my writing target and beyond. If I hit that flow state, I'll just keep going until I can't do any more. And I love that flow state. I really do. Once I've finished the book, I used to print them out. Obviously, I'm now a full-time traveler. I have a backpack for my clothes and a backpack for my office. And so I export into Word into a different font. So it looks completely different from what I've been staring at for the past 9 to 12 weeks. And then I will read it all the way through. I'll continue to fill in any gaps and things like that. And then I just send it to my editor and he does all the copy editing and stuff. So it's quite a fast process, but it's still professional from a quality perspective. And yeah, sometimes there are novels that take longer than my 12 weeks. I like 12 weeks because I know if I write a book in under that, it's got really good momentum because I'm excited about it. I'm following my detectives around going, but what if it's him? And did we get CCTV? Did we get the CCTV footage? And what's in the evidence that we haven't looked at yet? It's great fun. Best job in the world.
Now that you've reintroduced dictation into your writing routine, has that changed your process at all?
Not really, no. Dictation's fun. There's often bloopers. 2 weeks ago, there was one where one of my detectives happened to pee. He peed through the window instead of peered through the window. So sometimes I just sit there, screenshot it from my reader's newsletter and correct that and go, you got that one wrong, dictation software. And there's been plenty more like that. Some involve swearing as well. If I get a fright, it's suddenly like, whoa. So that's happened before. There's been swearing. So yeah, here's a tip. If you're doing dictation, always screenshot your errors for your reader newsletter. My readers are pretty much used to me by now and my sense of humor. But the process with the dictation is get the transcript, copy and paste it into Scrivener, the writing software that I prefer to use. Do a quick light edit to get rid of those bloopers while it's still fresh and I've got the audio next to me. I can still listen back to the audio and go, what the heck is that? And just put those corrections in, but then move on and keep writing.
Now, you did mention that you accidentally became a PI, and I would like to talk about that for a second, but more in the vein of research, because I imagine this happened because you were writing a PI story. So I'm curious about like your research process and how you stumbled into becoming a private detective.
So this stems from the book, a standalone book that came out summer last year called Murder in the Lakes. Now, the idea for that story has been kicking around in my head, and usually for me, for a story to take that long to actually get written and published, was because, as you say, the research. And I just hit a brick wall. I didn't have the confidence to write about a PI. And even though I wrote police procedurals and things, it's obviously very different. There are different rules. There are things they can't do. And although I wanted to write about PI fiction-wise, I didn't want to push the parameters of real life. It's like, it has to be believable. So I think it was during COVID. And I was like, right, I've got 5,000 words at the beginning of this story. I really like this character. It's the first time I'd ever written anything in first person as well. I tried writing it in third person like I normally do. No, she wasn't having any of it. It had to be first person. And then I stumbled and stopped. And it was because I didn't know and didn't have the confidence because I hadn't done the research. And during COVID, I found this online course thing. It was just, I thought it was just a bit of fun, signed up for it, wasn't too expensive. Got halfway through, and I'm taking notes as I go, yeah, I know that from the Senior Investigating Officer's Handbook. Yeah, I can skip that unit. I know all that. Oh, don't know anything about data and privacy. I'll sit and listen to this one. Halfway through, there was this little quiz. And it was like, you've got an hour to do all these questions. I was like, this is great. It's multiple choice as well. I love multiple choice. I don't have to think, like, tick, 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 tick. Finished the course, and about an hour later got an email saying, congratulations, you've just passed Part A of the BTEC Level 3 Private Investigator certificate. When COVID's over, you can come in and you can sit Part B of the moderated exam, if you like. We're in London, talk to you once all the restrictions get lifted. And I think it was just because of circumstances, it took me until about July 2022 to actually go up to London, and I had a whale of a time meeting all these people who were actual private investigators. So at lunchtime, I was just interviewing them, getting so many ideas. Passed my exam that afternoon. And August 22, my certificate turned up, which I keep very safe. in a box in storage. But that knowledge just gave me the freedom to go, do you know what? I actually do know what I'm talking about. When I've got the time, I'm going to return to that manuscript and write it. And Murder in the Lakes, I wrote over about 10, 11 weeks over the course of 2023. Had a blast writing it. It's such a fun private detective novel, and enjoyed the process so much. I have left it open for a follow-up book.
I love this. And I love that you had the follow through. Like, you did the preliminary exam online and you're like, no, I'm going to go in person. I'm going to be a fully certified private investigator. I love this so much. And
yeah, I spend a lot of time doing this, so it has to be fun.
And do you have any idea in the future if you're going to have a career change and start cracking cases in real life as a PI?
No, but a few people have read that article on my website and messaged me and go, listen, I've got this case. Like, whoa, stop there. Don't tell me anything. I am not a private investigator. I just did that for research purposes. But, if you need a private investigator, this is the college I learned from, and they keep a list of registered private investigators. Please speak to them.
But you must be on the list, though.
No, I've asked them to take me off after the second email. I was like, guys, this isn't my job.
But it could be. That's the great thing about it.
Yeah. If the writing ever goes down the drain, hey, look, call me.
So you've mentioned your upcoming release, which is your 15th book, What Evil Hides, in the K Hunter book series. How do you organize the continuity of writing such a long-standing series?
This is another really good tip for writers, actually. I studied screenwriting with the Australian Film and Television School back in early 2015. And the producer that was teaching the course taught me a very valuable lesson, was keep a story Bible. More so if you're running a series. So a story Bible is, you can use any format you want. You can do it in a Word file and just do character sheets for each character. But my story Bible is in Scrivener. I have in my story Bible a style sheet. So my editors and I know how we're going to spell certain words and phrases, technical terminology for the spy thrillers and the police procedures, character profiles for each of the characters, a character list for every single book so I never repeat a name by accident, how my characters' careers grow through the books. So if one of them gets a promotion in a book, I note that on their character sheet and the book it happened in and why. And then there are in there the book descriptions, every single book. And separately, because my detective's other half is a vet, I also have a separate character list for every single animal that he's brought home in the books, just in case there's a quiz.
Well, I really enjoy the full cast of characters that your book has, like especially in What Evil Hides, especially like the investigative team. They very much felt alive. You felt like you were sort of part of the investigation. So I'm wondering if you have any advice for authors who are looking to bring depth to their secondary characters.
Yeah, I was given a really good bit of advice early on in my career. Your secondary characters do not know they are secondary characters. Treat them the same as your main character. Could be a lady that you meet in a shop, or you go and interview someone at a gas station and you're talking to the cashier. Well, that cashier's most important day of their life is the police coming to talk to them. So yeah, your secondary characters don't know that they're secondary characters.
I love that. And I'm going to jump back in on the question about research again, because What Evil Hides starts at a farm for hops, for beer, which is a setting that I don't think I've seen in a book before, especially not a mystery thriller. So I'm curious how you made that setting feel so real and what that research project was like.
Before I moved out to Australia, I lived in Kent for 2 years, and the hops are a huge part of Kentish history. That's where a lot of the hops are grown for beer in England. And you see the hop fields everywhere. There's quite a pungent smell to them. Personally, I don't like it. Beer aficionados are going to hate me for it, but I do not like the smell of hops. They're also quite creepy because they're very tall. They grow on these enormous vines called bines, and they shut out sunlight. You've got sunlight above them, but actually when you're walking amongst fully grown hops, it's quite dark and creepy in a sort of organic way. It's like the creepy forest sort of thing. And then you have the oast houses that were used to dry the hops Some of them are still used. Most have been now converted into homes. But when I first moved down to Kent, I'd never seen an oast house on the horizon before. And I was like, that is such an eerie looking building. And I think at the back of my mind, as the K Hunter series has progressed through the years, I very much wanted to make a book, a very Kentish based book. I wanted the setting. I mean, setting is a character in itself anyway, but I think more so in this book, it's very special to me that this is a Kent-based police procedural series. And here we've got a setting that is so integral to that county.
That was, I wanted to ask, so is that a real phrase, vines? Because that's what I took away. It's like vines for beer, vines.
Yeah, vine, that's it. Vines for beer and vines for vineyards. Yeah, apparently it is a real saying. And I stumbled across that in my research and went, I'm having that. That's just such a great way of remembering it. And
totally. And I was wondering if you had made it up or if it was legitimate.
No, I wish. No, that was straight from the research. And I think that's the thing with research, and Lee Child has said this, is go and do all the research you like, but treat it with a light touch when it reaches the page.
I love that.
Now, this, as we have mentioned, is book 15 in the K Hunter series. And I'm curious how you utilize your backlist when you are marketing and leading up to a new release in such a long-running series.
Yeah, I think it doesn't even matter if you've got 3 books or 4 books in a series. I think you will always see a lift at the beginning of the series because of the marketing you're doing for the latest in the series. And I also see a little bit of lift in the middle as well, where people have gone, we're on book 15. I've only got to book 11. I didn't know there was a 12, 13, 14, let alone 15. I've done that. Sorry, Damien Boyd. Just bought his last 4 books. Because I realised I've missed some. I've been so busy. So it does happen. And I think in order you can engineer, as an author and marketing, you can engineer some of that by lowering the price of your first in series, leading up 12 weeks before the new book comes out to attract new readers. That helps. And then if you can, do some promotion mid-series as well, and get that little lift amongst existing series readers too. And then a new release will come out. It always surprises me how many readers contact me saying that a new release is the first book that they've read in the series. Because if I discover a new series, I have to go back to book 1. I'm very, very, I have to know how the characters grow. And I've done that with every single series that I've discovered. But I get readers that will say, I discovered Kay in book 6. I'm like, but we're on book 13. It's like, they're like, yeah, I'll go back and read the others. It's like, but that, to me, that doesn't work. If that's you, great, thank you. But I think that's also why, if you're writing a series, you need to make sure that you can pull new readers into that book as a standalone without smothering them in and your existing readers backing over your characters' past endeavors too heavily. I think there's a real balance to be had there. So you can introduce new readers to your characters without alienating them and go, I have no idea why that character's doing that. And you don't bore your existing readers by saying, oh, I know that. So there's a balance to be found there as well.
Well, I do think your books can be read as standalone, so you seem to be kind of achieving that balance. And it's interesting that you still find the first book the key sort of marketing piece, even to a book 15. That's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, it's certainly, marketing book 1 is always a key part of a new release marketing strategy. And like I said, the middle one as well. I think the first 4 books in the K Hunter series, in my mind, because there's an underlying subplot that contributes to how Kay grows as a character, for me, they're key. So I would say to people, you want to really understand how Kay got to where she is, books 1 to 4 are key for that subplot. With the Mark Turpin series, I do that within the first 3 books. After that, I think all the books can be read as standalones from those key moments. But if you pick up book 8 or book 9 in the K Hunter series, you're not reading those first 4 books, I can assure you.
I want to touch on the balance piece one more time and looking more at the balance between the characters, like your investigative team, because you've talked about how they grow over the novels and how they act a certain way because of things that have happened previously in the series. But you're also you've got a brand new murder investigation going with every book. So how do you balance that character growth with the plot of your story?
I think it's by giving every single character some space. And that was really important to me right from the get-go. Writing the K Hunter series. I love TV dramas such as CSI and NCIS. NCIS was a big learning curve. And I went back and read and watched interviews on YouTube with the writers, the director, and everything of NCIS to understand how they got that team dynamic working. So no Kay Hunter book, no Mark Turpin book is ever just about that detective. There are point of view scenes from every single person in that detective team because they've all got something to say. They've all got different skill sets. And that's how a real investigative team works. You have somebody at the top to manage everybody, but everybody contributes. And that's why often I'll have a uniformed constable or probationary constable come out with a really profound comment, but it blows open the case. And they can suddenly go, that's a really good point. And because of their immaturity, investigative work, they can come up with suggestions that a seasoned detective might overlook. So I love that dynamic. I really do. But it's mostly organic. Like I said, I don't plot these things. These characters they do what they want. I just follow around writing.
So will this series go on forever? Does it matter? I guess it doesn't really. You could be writing book 45 of the Kay Hunter series.
I'd love to, because Angie Marsons is doing that with her Kim Stone series, and they're just going from strength to strength, and they're consistently great quality. Readers have asked me this before, and I said, the day I stop writing Kay Hunter books is the day I stop having fun writing Kay Hunter books. And until then, I'm just going to keep going, because I love these characters to bits. I learned so much writing these books. And so, hey, we could have Kay Hunter number 54. I might be 90 years old, and somebody else might have to type it for me by that point. But I'll just keep going. I'll just keep going all the time. I'm having fun.
Nice, because that's a question we get from authors sometimes is like, how long should a series be or anything? So I love examples like this where you're like, it could be book 15 and it's going to keep going because ultimately, how long is a piece of string? It doesn't really matter. Yeah,
exactly that. And I think as well, some of my writing heroes, Ian Rankin, Michael Connolly, have written characters into a corner where they have to retire because right early on, they said how old their detectives were. And they've, I think Michael Connolly's one, Harry Bosch, aged in real time. Well, I don't want to do that. Somebody could discover book 1. It's the 10th anniversary of it this year. Someone could discover that book when it's 20 years old and then say, oh, there's only 54 books in the series. And it's because I had to retire Kay Hunter. And it's like, that's not going to happen. So I never talk about, I always say Kay is in her mid-30s and that's it.
I never had thought about like the aging of a detective, and because there's retirement storylines throughout your book. So that's interesting.
Yeah, well, when I started writing Scared to Death, I was reading every interview I could find with my writing heroes, so Phil McDermott, Michael Connolly, Robert Cray, Eddie Griffith, Peter James. I read as many interviews as I could, and I just think I absorbed that into what I was writing and what I was learning. And it's the interviews where they say, what's one thing you wish you had done? I think I just absorbed all of that and went, but I'm never doing that. I might do that. Certainly never doing that. And it just made this sort of informed decision making as to what I was going to do with this character in this series.
Nice. And you've talked about how you're a big fan of traveling. And whenever we connect, I'm always like, where in the world is Rachel now? And you are sort of like kind of have a nomadic writing lifestyle. And I'm just wondering if you can chat a little bit about this. Like, how do you fit your writing into this nomadic existence?
Writing still is a priority. My other half, he also works remotely. So people sometimes hear what I'm doing, what we're doing, and they say, oh, you're on holiday, you're having a great time. It's like, no, we're working. It's just that we work in different countries, in different houses and things like that. It's a case of discipline is key. It's really difficult. We often say that the day we move house is pure disruption work-wise. The day before, the day we move, and sometimes the day after, or we're getting faster at hitting the ground running the day after we move. We've now perfected our setup for each of us, right down to who's carrying what plug and all the rest of it, who's got the travel adapters. My backpack, my small day pack is a 30-litre day pack, and in there, if there's a fire, that's the bag I grab. That's got my laptop, my noise-cancelling earbuds. It's got chargers. It's got microphones. It's got a notebook and pen, my iPad, everything that I need to run my business. I do miss seeing my books as paperbacks. Sometimes, I haven't had a brag shelf, or I haven't had books of other people's around for like 18 months now, and I do miss real books. I think working ahead of schedule really helps, because in those 2 or 3 weeks that I am back in the UK catching up with family and friends, I pick a family member and go, right, you're going to get the ARC copies of every single book I've got lined up, ready to come out this year, because I need to check them. And then I'll make off with those, and I'll leave them somewhere in an Airbnb or something once I finish with them. But it is about maintaining a routine and not getting too carried away with the exploring. I think last time we were here in Brazil, in this particular location, we were here for 9 weeks and we had 2 proper days off, because we both enjoy what we're doing, and it's just because it's just the 2 of us. We go to work, we work different hours and things like that, but yeah, we had 2 days off during that 9 week period, but we were so productive. It really set us up for the rest of the year, and it sets us up for those days of disruption when we are moving. We're banking that work and that time ahead of schedule. I feel very, very lucky that I can do this, and all the time I can, I'm going to make the most of it.
And when you are traveling and moving and going from place to place, do you have a dedicated setup for your writing, and how important is having that dedicated space for you?
Yeah, my dedicated setup is my laptop. I've got, obviously, a travel SIM on my phone, so if the Wi-Fi is a bit dodgy, I can switch to hotspot on my phone. I back up to cloud. There's 3 ways of backing up, and I did this even when I wasn't traveling so much. I back up to cloud. I back up by emailing my work to myself every day when I finish writing, and I have an external USB stick, old style, just in case something happens, the cloud goes down, I can still back up my work. And that's key, is backup in case of an emergency.
Oh no, I think it's a great point. We don't talk about that enough with backing up, because especially if you're in your house, you're sort of just assuming, well, like, internet exists and I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I learned that one from seeing almost seeing grown men cry in engineering projects when things hadn't been bagged up properly, and there goes the next version of the drawings, sort of thing. So it's like, yeah, back up, but don't just back up in one place. Have several places that you can back up to, no matter where you are in the world.
And what sort of schedule do you maintain then when you sit down? Because I know you said like 80-20 with business and writing. Is it you and your partner are doing a 9 to 5? Do you sort of stay on UK hour time zone-ish? Or does it really depend?
No, I'm an early bird and he's a night owl. So it works really well. We sort of meet up for breakfast and dinner, depending on how much work we've each got on. And because we're in the tropics at the moment, it's really warm down here. That stood me, living in Australia for 13 years stood me in good stead. I knew what to expect when I came out to Brazil the first time. This is the second time we've spent 6 months working out here. And because it gets very humid, because the temperature ramps up, I tend to work early in the morning, because then I'm really productive while it's still quite cool. And then get the writing done first, and then have a break, go to the gym or go to a Portuguese lesson. I'm learning Portuguese at the moment, so I'll go off to my Portuguese lesson. And then in the afternoon, where it's the heat of the day, you can just relax, read a book, catch up with some TV on the laptop or something like that, and then work again in the evening and pick it up that way. Whereas my boyfriend, he'll work through the night, because it's obviously cooler at night, and those hours work for what he does really, really well. So it's about, I think productivity comes with finding if you're not in a 9 to 5 job, or you've got flexible hours where as long as the work gets done, your boss is happy. I think it's really important to work with the environment you find yourself in. Don't try and force yourself to work the way you are used to working, because sometimes it won't work, and that's when the panic sets in. And we don't want panicking. Writing's too much fun.
That sounds like a lovely day. Work in the morning, have a nice little afternoon break, read a book in the warmth. I'm so envious of the warmth. You're in the depth of winter here.
Yeah. We have said that the past 18 months we've just been chasing sunshine.
Start doing that myself. I'm curious though, throughout your travels and seeing new places and meeting new people, do you find inspiration for future books and series throughout your traveling?
Yeah, without a doubt. Absolutely, without a doubt. And sometimes when I've been really busy, last year was mad. It was crazy busy. I do realize I sort of come up for air sometimes after 4 or 5 days and go, oh, I've got cabin fever. I really need to get out and just cycle somewhere and get an early morning coffee or something so I can just sit there and people watch and listen and watch and daydream. Daydreaming is really important. So yeah, traveling has really influenced a few ideas. And, while I've been here, I've had 2 new ideas pop into my head that I can't wait to start writing. I really can't. And it's going to involve some research while I'm here. But yeah, I haven't decided on the location yet. I don't know if it's going to be based in Brazil or whether I'll base it in Australia. But I really like it. And again, I only know the opening scene, but I'm really excited by it. I can't wait to find out what happens next.
Well, that's a great way to sort of wind down our conversation. And where can listeners find you online if they want to figure out what this new project that you're alluding to?
Yeah, best way of finding out more about me is on my website, which is rachelamphlett.com. You'll find all my social links in the footer on that. And if you'd like to join my reader newsletter, feel free to do so.
Great. Thanks so much for chatting with us, Rachel. I know it's, you're making us jealous in Brazil, but I appreciate you being able to dial in and do this remotely.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's always great fun catching up with you.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you're interested in picking up Rachel's books, we will include links in our show notes. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're looking for more tips on growing your self-publishing business, you can find us on social. We are at Kobo Writing Life on Facebook, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads.
This episode was hosted by Tara Kremen and Rachel Wharton, with production by Terrence Abrahams. Editing is provided by Kelly Robotham. Our theme music is composed by Tearjerker, and a huge thanks to Rachel Amphlett for being our guest today. If you're ready to start your publishing journey, sign up today at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing.